Aloha and welcome to this very requested what it's like to live in Hawaii Q&A video. Hi, if you're new here, and welcome. My name is Jamie and I film vlog content about what it is like to live in Hawaii and also, for the most part, solo adventure in Hawaii. So we have recently, a few weeks ago, passed my 1-year anniversary of moving out here to the island, so I thought it was finally time to do like a Q&A video for this, and this video is sort of a compilation of either questions that I am frequently asked or very specific questions that friends or family have asked me, or even I opened up kind of questions on a couple of my other social media accounts, got some good responses, so I am going to try to answer as many as I can in this video. So if you're new here, a little bit of sort of background about myself is I was born and raised in Western Massachusetts, and then I moved to Boston where I lived for 8 years before last year in January 2020 when I sort of on a whim decided to move out here to Hawaii. So I sort of always jokingly say that I have now moved to Hawaii 1.5 times. The first time when I initially moved out here, it was January 2020, and then in September 2020 I sort of had a 3-week interim where I went back to the mainland, got to see my family for a bit, and then 3 weeks later came back but moved to a different island. So without further ado, let's hop into some questions. First question is it expensive to move to Hawaii? Now, the short answer is it depends. I'm probably not the best person to talk about a full-scale move because that is not what I did either of the times that I was moving myself and items to Hawaii. So when I moved out to Lanai in January of 2020, I was very fortunate to be working for a company that was going to cover all of my moving expenses up to $5,000. And that was perfect for me. Because when I moved out here, sort of like I touched on a little bit earlier, there wasn't a lot of planning behind that thought process. And I also was given sort of a very quick, can you be here in 2 weeks notice. So when I moved out here, it was just me, my 2 checked bags, a carry-on suitcase, a personal item, and then I shipped myself 3 sort of medium-sized boxes, just moving boxes you can get on Amazon. So that was it. And kind of the cost was just shipping the 3 boxes, the cost of the U-Haul to kind of move my things that I wasn't bringing with me to the island, move that out of my apartment in Boston and into my mom's house for storage in Western Mass. So it was the 3 boxes, the U-Haul, my plane ticket, and then my check bag fees. And all of that came out to, I believe, just under $1,000, which again was not out of pocket for me. The only thing I really had to pay for was my coffee at the airport. So I was really fortunate to have a company that covered that cost for me. Sort of the halftime, the second time I moved to Hawaii, when I moved to the Big Island in October of 2020. Again, I was working for a different company out here, and they also were covering some of my moving expenses, and this time it was literally just me, my 2 check bags, and my carry-on suitcase. So it was, this time I believe, under $500 for me to move. But if you are moving a house worth of stuff, basically, it can absolutely get a little bit expensive. I've talked to a few people that have moved here that did, move with their family, and they were shipping furniture and shipping covers, and that was kind of ranging anywhere in the sort of $8,000 to $15,000 range just to ship their stuff, not counting their plane tickets and baggage fees. And a lot of people do choose to sort of pay the oversized baggage fees because it is cheaper to do that than to have your stuff put in like a pod and shipped over here that way. So I guess this just sort of proves if you are a single person moving out here, you can do it for less than $1,000. Was it scary to move to Hawaii by yourself? Honestly, no. But I think that has a lot to do with me as a person because I tend not to get nervous or have a lot of anxiety in situations that you typically think that I would, like packing up my life and moving 5,000 miles away. You know, it's a huge life decision, and I just sort of rolled with the punches on it. But that's how I am as a person. I'm very much kind of just go with the flow. It's just sort of it's a thing that's happening, and we're just going to adapt and move on with it. But I think a big part for me when I did first come out here and I was moving to Lanai is the company I was working for, the resort there, took care of a lot of things for me that I didn't have to worry about. So they, like I said earlier, covered kind of the cost of my moving expenses. You know, when I got to the airport, they picked me up there, they took me, you know, to the resort, and they actually housed me. I lived at the resort the entire time I was there, basically. The theory had been to, you know, they would house me until they could find me housing in town on the island, but unfortunately the housing shortage there is crazy, and I just never moved out of the hotel the entire time. So, you know, I didn't have to worry about finding a house right away and paying rent or any of that because it was taken care of for me. They also, ahead of time before moving, had sent me a sort of welcome packet and like a little PowerPoint on what it is like to live on the island, because Lanai is very, very different from most of the other Hawaiian islands. It's very remote, only has a population of about 3,000 people. It's very, very rural, so, you know, it was kind of a little bit of a package to sort of get prepped for, you know, there is only one gas station on the island, there is only one grocery store. You're going to go to work and see people there, and you're going to go home and you're going to see those same people in town later, you know, running errands on your day off. It's a very, very different experience. So if you are looking for that really secluded Hawaiian experience, Lanai might be a place for you. Full disclaimer though is pretty much the only thing to do on that island is to be at the Four Seasons. So unless you are planning to retire there, you better have a job with Four Seasons before arriving. When I moved to the Big Island in October last year, that was a little bit more difficult, I would say, but I still wouldn't say it was scary. You know, I had been kind of done this before. This was really like the second go around for me. What was different about this time though was I was completely on my own to find housing and, you know, all of that. And I got very lucky to find a condo that had move-in availability right away. And then kind of the, again, not really scary but stressful part was I did have to kind of immediately go and buy a car because you really do need a car to get around here on the Big Island. So it was just those kind of little stressful bits, and I think it was the hardest part, kind of the second go around and moving over here, was kind of knowing that I was going to be by myself for real this time. And when I first moved to Lanai, I arrived on that island only vaguely knowing the 4 people that I had spoken to on the phone during my interview process. You know, I had never met them, we never did a video call, didn't even know what they looked like besides what I was trying to, you know, find people on LinkedIn. But, you know, it was a very interesting experience to walk into something that was completely new. And I was so fortunate there to just find such an amazing community and really, really great friends that I know are going to be lifelong friends of mine. And so it was a little bit difficult, again, to sort of leave that. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but if you want kind of a story of why I left Lanai, I will link one of my previous vlogs where I talked about that down below, so go check that out. So anyway, it was sort of difficult to leave that island, come over here, kind of just knowing that my friends are a 30-minute plane ride away, but it's, you know, I can't really get to them just timing-wise and travel-wise, especially with COVID at the moment. So it is sort of tough to know that you are kind of by yourself in a different sense of by yourself. But again, it's an adventure, and I still can just, when I'm feeling sad, I can just pick up the phone and, you know, call my friends and talk to them. What do you wish you had known about Hawaii before moving here? So honestly, in the opinion of a humble New Englander, I think it is hot all the time here. On the Big Island, it does tend to kind of be in the 80s for most of the year. That's hot. I sweat all the time. I sort of wish I had a better understanding of that before I moved, because I ended up bringing some clothes with me that I really did not need. And I ended up having to go, after I moved to Lanai, very quickly I had to go over to Maui to like go shopping and go buy some more shirts for work, because I brought more kind of long sleeve button downs and not a lot of short sleeve button downs, and short sleeve was what I wanted to be in because it was always, 80, 85 degrees, especially in the summer, and I worked right down on the water, so it was always hot on the beach. So I wish I'd sort of had a local to talk to before moving here that might have given me a little bit of wardrobe advice. Is it expensive to ship items to Hawaii? Again, I think it depends on what you're shipping. When I sent myself kind of 3 boxes of things, it really depended kind of on the weight of the boxes. I think it was under $100 for all 3 boxes, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's an option that you can kind of mail yourself stuff. And then in terms of kind of ordering, if you are ordering things online, there are definitely some companies that have extra shipping fees for Hawaii because we are so far out, really in the middle of the ocean. We are the most remote landmass in the world, technically speaking. So it is absolutely 1000% worth it to have an Amazon Prime account or have a Target Red Card account, because both of those services offer free shipping on your items. Full and fair disclosure though, 2-day shipping with Prime is not a thing out here, but it is so worth it to have the Prime account just to not pay for shipping. What made you want to move to Hawaii? So I moved out to Hawaii for work. So I work in the hospitality industry in food and beverage management, and when I moved out here, it was to work at a resort on Lanai, and same thing when I came to the Big Island, it was to work at a resort. Before I got the offer back in January 2020, I had never even considered moving out here. It was just so not on my radar. And at the time, because I was looking for a new opportunity, I had been at my previous place of employment for 5 years and was just sort of looking for a new adventure. And I had options of where I could go. I could have gone to Florida, I could have gone to Virginia, I could have stayed in Boston, I could have gone to Seattle, or I could have come out here to Hawaii. And at the end of the day, Hawaii just offered me the best overall package in terms of salary and location, and they were covering my moving expenses, so that was a huge plus for me. What do you miss most about the mainland? I would probably have to say my friends and family. Being out here for me is everybody is 5,000 miles away back on the East Coast, and it can definitely get a little lonely, especially being out here by yourself, kind of knowing all of your friends are kind of back home together. But that's also the wonderful thing about Zoom and FaceTime, is that you can, be talking to someone kind of at a second's notice, really. Like right before I sat down to film this, I got off of a Zoom call with a bunch of my friends who still all live back on the East Coast, and we try and set up a weekly call, and it's, if you make the call, you make it. If you don't, you don't. But it's something that kind of, since quarantine started last March, it's something that we've really tried to stick to, just for everybody's kind of mental health and well-being. And I love, that's one of the highlights of my week is having that call. Also, I really miss kava. If you don't know what kava is, it's like Chipotle, but it's Mediterranean, and it's so good. And it's very hard to find good Greek food and good Mexican food out here, which are 2 of my favorite things. So I do really miss the food a little bit. Can you bring your pets with you to Hawaii? Yes, you can, but you need to make sure that you have kind of done all of the paperwork necessary to bring them over here. So Hawaii sort of treats all animals that come into the islands as if they're an invasive species, basically. You need to make sure that your pet has kind of all of their updated shots and everything is good to go with them medically. And then they are also going to have to do a quarantine when you arrive here, and there are quarantine facilities specifically designed for this. Sort of very similar to how some people have to come over here now and quarantine for 2 weeks because of COVID. So it's absolutely a thing that you can do. As some of you know, I have a cat who is back on the mainland. His name is Oliver, and he's my precious baby boy. And we made the decision to have him stay on the mainland with his 2 other moms, my 2 old roommates. And that was ultimately, at the end of the day, it was the best decision for him and for all 3 of us, because we knew that he would not be digging a 12-hour plane ride out here. He's got separation anxiety issues and just generalized anxiety as well. So that would not have been good, and I also knew that I wasn't going to have housing right away. I was going to be in a hotel room, and that wasn't going to be a good environment for him, and we just didn't want to put him through that stress. So he lives down in Plymouth, Massachusetts now, and he's very happy, and I miss him terribly, but like I said earlier, I did just get to video chat with him. So I get to see him, and I get picture updates every few days, and I miss him, but that was, ultimately, it was the right decision. I do have friends that did move to Hawaii with their pets. I have a couple of friends that moved from Maui, and they brought their dogs over with them. The dogs were kind of already in Hawaii. At the time, it did just kind of move islands, so it was less of a hassle to make that move with them. I also have another friend that moved with her cat from England, and Spidey made that journey on the plane, and she survived. She's doing fine. So it can be done. So it really just depends on you and your pet and what you think the best decision ultimately is going to be. When is the best time to move to Hawaii? So generally there's about 2 windows of opportunity throughout the year that are kind of the quote-unquote best times to move to Hawaii, and that is in between peak tourist seasons. So I would recommend anywhere from kind of the middle of January to kind of the middle of May, and then again in the September to early November. This way you are going to avoid the summer crowds of tourists and also avoid the festive season crowds of tourists as well. Because if you are looking for a short-term rental, maybe you only want to come out here for 6 months or a year, you're more likely to find something kind of in those in-between months when places aren't really renting to tourists necessarily. So if you are looking to move here for a while, those would be the kind of 2 windows of opportunity I would recommend. Are you ever going to move back to the mainland? Honestly, I don't know for certain. Like I mentioned earlier, I did move out here for work, and inevitably I will move for work again, whether that is going to be back to the mainland, to another island, or somewhere abroad, kind of when travel restrictions around the world ease up in the future. I don't know. I really enjoyed living out here. Would love to continue to stay out here, but again, it's all going to depend on work for me and kind of where the next opportunity is going to present itself. Is it expensive to live in Hawaii? The short answer is yes. In terms of housing, there really kind of housing options are very limited out here. So things do tend to be a little bit pricier. So for example, right now I'm not going to get a ton into kind of my personal finances, but I'll just do a quick kind of overview. So for me, I am one person and I live in a 1-bedroom condo, and my rent with my GET, which is sort of a living tax out here in Hawaii, is I think the best way to describe it. So I pay about $16.50 a month, and I know that sounds ridiculous for one person, but that's actually one of the less expensive places in Kona that I came across when I was looking for somewhere to live. So it covers, you know, the condo, it covers I have parking, it covers my trash, and it covers my water. So the only things I have to pay for are my Wi-Fi and my electricity. And my Spectrum bill is about $50 a month, which is really not bad. Spectrum really is also the only kind of Wi-Fi option you have out here, just FYI. Luckily don't really have too many problems with them. Sometimes the Wi-Fi does go out because you live on an island and things happen, but overall pretty good service. And my electricity bill kind of varies sort of month to month, anywhere between sort of the $50 to $90 range, just depending on how often I'm home and am I running my air conditioner or not. Then for me, I just also have some kind of other general upkeeping life payments I have to do, like my car payments and my car insurance, and I have renter's insurance and kind of all of that jazz. And then in terms of kind of buying things like groceries, is yes, the prices do tend to be more expensive than on the mainland because we have to have pretty much everything either barged in or flown in. So there is already going to be sort of that extra charge just for that service to get the items out here. It's also not as bad as people think. I think that one of the biggest myths that I always hear is that milk is like $10 a gallon, and that's not true in the least bit. Take it for someone that is lactose intolerant and does have to buy kind of specialty non-dairy products a lot. Yeah, they're expensive and more expensive than kind of dairy milk would be, but it's still not that bad. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. So as long as you're kind of just keeping an eye on your expenses and sort of tracking what you're spending and spending habits, you know, it's definitely manageable and affordable to live out here, but definitely know that it is more expensive than the mainland. Do you like living by yourself? I would say for the most part, yes. It is nice to have my own space. There's nobody here to bother me. I never have to shut the bathroom door when I pee. That's great. I can sort of set my own schedule. I never have to worry about bothering another person in the house. It is nice, but sometimes it does get a little bit lonely, especially when you kind of get into you know, a little bit of a downer mood and you start to kind of miss your friends. But like I said earlier, you just pick up the phone, call them, text them. Like I text with one of my best friends who still lives on the Nye just about every day. So, you know, we're just always talking to each other. So even when I'm kind of feeling down, I know I can just call Sue and hang out, and then I instantly feel better. Do you go to the beach every day? No. I think that's another kind of big myth, is that people that live in Hawaii just hang out on the beach all the time and just drink Mai Tais and chill and don't do anything, and that's not the case. For me personally, like I work in an area where I'm staring at the ocean all day. So on my day off, I don't necessarily want to go and stare at the ocean anymore. Sometimes it is nice though to kind of treat yourself to a beach day, and that's the wonderful thing about living out here on the islands, is that you are really never more than 20 minutes away from a beach at any given moment. And for me personally, I don't like to spend all day at the beach. I'm really good for an hour or two and then I'm sort of done. So I can really, if I want to go to the beach for 45 minutes, just drive down there, put my towel down, hang out, and then when I'm done and I can go home. What is the food like in Hawaii? So a lot of kind of the local restaurants and local cuisine really are focused on sort of traditional Hawaiian cuisine, which is really wonderful. It was something that I didn't have a ton of exposure to living in New England. There's also a lot of kind of Asian influences out here, a lot of Filipino and Japanese food, as well as there's a lot of Thai places here in Kona, which is great. I love Thai food. But a lot of the kind of general focus is on fresh and local ingredients, which I really love. And again, as someone that works in food and beverage, so that's something that's very important to me. I will say though that I am a vegetarian, and that earns me a lot of weird looks out here, just because kind of the predominant food cultures are very meat-based out here, and it's just not something I eat. So I eat a lot of tofu, but luckily I can take kind of most dishes out here and sort of just replace the pork or chicken or whatever with tofu, and it works just the same. It's just as delicious. So it's fine. Just people laugh at me a lot out here. Also, spam is everywhere. It's a whole thing. I remember during kind of when quarantine started about a year ago, going to the grocery store on Lanai, and there was a handwritten sign on one of the shelves that said, "Limit 4 cans of Spam per customer." Wild. What's the most annoying part about living in Hawaii? Probably having to shave my legs all the time. Yeah, it is annoying. I'll be 100% level with you. And that's something because I am in shorts all the time. I work in shorts. It's hot in shorts. So that's the thing I constantly have to do. Sort of a better answer here, I guess, would be scarcity of resources. Again, a lot of items have to be shipped in, so kind of when a store is out of something, they're kind of out of it. And I've sort of learned that when I'm going grocery shopping, is not to come in with a list of any sorts, because guaranteed there's going to be 4 or 5 items missing from it. And so I've kind of learned to just walk in the store, see what's there, and figure out what kind of meal can I make with what I have found. Also, tourists can be real idiots sometimes. Is it scary to live somewhere with an active volcano? Not really, I would say. For me, I do live on the Big Island, and this is the only island that does have an active volcano on it at the moment. And it did erupt back in December, and I got all of these, calls and texts being like, "Oh my god, the volcano's erupting, are you okay?" And I was like, yeah, for me, I live 2 hours away from it. Kind of the worst thing that happened to us in Kona was we got a tiny earthquake for about 10 seconds. Also, to be perfectly honest, I didn't live here in 2018 when the big eruption happened, and that affected large areas around kind of Puna and Hilo, and did wreck kind of entire neighborhoods and wrecked roads. And I'm sure that if I lived in that area during that time, I would have a much different answer. But for me, I've just had one tiny little eruption so far, and it really doesn't impact my daily life one bit. Do you get hurricanes in Hawaii? Yes, but not very frequently. Definitely not, they're not as common as they are in the Caribbean or in Florida or anything like that. We did have one hurricane sort of warning last summer with Hurricane Douglas, who had the entire Pacific Ocean to exist in, and of course chose to track directly over Hawaii. So for us, we did have to take it very seriously, so we kind of closed up the resort 90% of the way. Obviously we still had some guests in house, but we had to shut down the pool and kind of tie everything down and make sure it wasn't going to blow away. Again, that was when I was living on Lanai, and we didn't really get hit. We got a little bit of rain, kind of windy. Mostly the hurricane hit Kauai, kind of got the worst of it, but it wasn't, I don't believe it was a full force hurricane by the time it actually got here. But it was really comical because, for me, it was my first hurricane that I, had been in, and I had several coworkers who were from Florida that were kind of just all sitting there going this is nothing, average Tuesday for us. So that was pretty funny to sort of experience that with them there. We do also have the potential for tsunamis, again, because we are an island in the middle of the ocean. It's not something that happens very often. I do technically live in a tsunami zone, because I do live right on the water here in Kona. And I do, the kind of route I take to get up to the highway is a tsunami evacuation route. So it's something you're kind of aware of, but again, it happens so infrequently, it's not really a problem here. Are there scary bugs in Hawaii? I don't know that I would really say they're scary bugs or critters, not like Australia level freaky of critters out here, but there definitely are some. Kind of the worst thing that I have to deal with is cockroaches. They're pretty abundant out here. But they exist pretty much anywhere you are. Hawaiian cockroaches do fly though, so definitely be prepared for that. It's just something you kind of deal with. You sort of shove them out of the way, and for me, I'll link another one of my vlogs down below where I did have to kind of chase a cockroach around my house at 11 p.m. at night to get it outside one night. So if you want to go watch that story, will be linked below. I have seen a few sort of freaky big spiders out here, and if you know me, I really don't vibe with spiders in the least bit. Luckily, I've never had an issue with any of them in my house. I've really mostly kind of seen them outdoors, and they've been, up on a building or on a tree, and that's, as long as they stay over there, that's fine. There are sort of a lot of little like fruit flies around, and little ants are kind of everywhere, so if that thing bothers you, Hawaii probably isn't the best place for you. Also, in terms of kind of other critters, there's geckos everywhere, and they're really, really cute. I love seeing them outside. Don't like when they're in your house, so if you get geckos in your house, that's a problem because they're gonna poop everywhere. Do you ever get island fever? Not really, I would say. There's so much to do here in Hawaii that you don't really need to go off island to go experience anything, especially like here on the Big Island is I can drive a few hours, you know, to get around, and I can be at the beach. I could go be kind of in sort of the jungle area. I could be in the mountain, you know, all sorts of fun stuff to do. So you don't really have to go anywhere to have a good time. It is pretty easy to get around island to island though if you are looking for a change of scenery. Usually you can just hop a flight over to another island. Everything's about 30-40 minute flight. You know, it's pretty easy. When I lived on Lanai, we had the ferry over to Maui, which was about 45 minutes to an hour. And just the ferry trip itself was great because you got to basically see whales in the channel all the time. So it was like a whale watch trip with, you know, an added bonus if you're going to Maui to go, presumably go buy something that you can't get on Lanai. Right now it is a little bit more difficult to kind of travel island to island, just with the travel restrictions. You do need to have a COVID test kind of in order to travel to most islands. One exception right now is if you are traveling to Oahu, you do not need to have a negative COVID test. You can just travel there. But if you are traveling to the Big Island or to any of the islands in Maui County, which is Maui, Lanai, and Molokai, you also will need to have a COVID test. And if you are traveling to Kauai, they at the moment are still mandating a 14-day quarantine regardless if you have a COVID test or not. And if you want to know a little bit more about sort of inter-island travel, stick around for a video that will be coming out shortly, where I will be talking about that very topic. Which islands have you been to? So like I said earlier, when I first moved out here, I moved to Lanai. And then while I was living on Lanai, I was able to travel over to Maui a few times, just hop on the ferry. Again, it was a nice trip. Now I live on the Big Island. I live in Kailua Kona here. I've also been to Oahu technically 3 times, but I have never left the airport. Are there currently travel restrictions for Hawaii? Yes, I did just briefly touch on this a few questions ago. But like I said, most islands are going to require a negative COVID test in order for you to skip the 14-day quarantine. And you have to have your negative results within 72 hours of your arrival in Hawaii. And if you are traveling from the mainland or even traveling island to island, you will have to go fill out a bunch of forms on HawaiiSafeTravels.com, which I will link below if that's a resource that you're going to need. And it's just making sure that you have your COVID results, you have kind of a current picture of yourself, if you have any other medical documents that you need to present, and then you also have to kind of fill out kind of what your business is in Hawaii, kind of where are you staying, are you a resident, are you a tourist, you know, how long you're going to be on each island for. Again, it's all COVID precautions, which are so important, especially for tourists coming in from the mainland who most likely have more exposure to COVID than we do out here on the islands. Is there public transportation available? Some of the more urban areas do offer public transportation, either kind of buses or shuttle services. But if you're going to a more rural part of Hawaii, that is not going to really be an option. Uber and Lyft also exist out here, but for the most part, I would not recommend relying on public transportation unless maybe you live in Honolulu where it is sort of a regular thing. I would definitely recommend having a car as a way to get around out here. Is it expensive to buy a car in Hawaii? I don't think it's much more expensive than the mainland would be. Definitely a little bit more of a limited selection out here, but yeah, not particularly bad. For me, when I moved to Lanai is I did a private sale and just bought kind of what we call a junker island car when I was there, and it was very inexpensive, and it was great for just kind of all I needed it to do was to get me, you know, to and from work. When I moved out here to the Big Island, I decided that I was going to treat myself and buy something a little bit nicer. So I did choose to buy a used car, and I bought a 3-year-old Jeep Renegade from a dealer here in Kona, and it was a former lease vehicle, so it was very lightly used, only had about 25,000 miles on it. You know, very inexpensive. I think it was $17,500 was the final price that we got to. So yeah, very, very affordable, I would say. And I love having a car here, like I sort of mentioned earlier, because it's just so much easier. You can just get around everywhere. And the reason I wanted to specifically purchase a Jeep was because of the 4-wheel drive capabilities, because there is kind of a lot of off-roading to do here in the islands, especially in the Big Island. There's a lot of kind of tracks down to the beach, tracks up in the mountains that are not paved roads. You're definitely going to want that 4-wheel drive. So definitely something to think about if you are purchasing a car in Hawaii. What do you do for work? So like I touched on earlier, I work in the hospitality industry. I'm a food and beverage manager. Since moving out to Hawaii, I've worked at 2 different resort properties out here. And kind of hospitality tourism is the biggest industry we have out in the islands, so that really is kind of the sector where most of the jobs are right now, which is, again, with kind of COVID and everything happening, you know, it's been tough because so many places have had to close and so many people are just laid off. But what's been really great is kind of since October is we've really been working up to kind of reopening the islands, and we're in a much better place than we were a year ago at this point. So it's nice to see kind of the industry beginning to flourish once again. In your last vlog, were you really reading Paradise Lost for fun? Yes! For those of you who don't know, I have a bachelor's in 18th century British literature, and now I work in hospitality. I don't get it either. But anyway, yes, I'll link that vlog down below again, but yes, I am currently rereading Paradise Lost because I have been writing a lot recently sort of about loss and grief and learning to sit with someone else's anger and their grief. And my good pal John Milton has a lot of thoughts on the subject, so it's been very helpful to kind of work through my own thoughts and work through, you know, his wonderful writing kind of in conjunction. So he's been helping me out with that. Also, if you have not read Paradise Lost, would 110% recommend it. And if you don't have time to read the actual thing, definitely read the Spark Notes. And final question for this vlog is, what is your favorite thing that you have done since moving to Hawaii? If I had to pick one thing, it would probably be the day that my friends and I drove up to Shipwreck Beach when I was living on Lanai. Also link that vlog down below, you can check that out. But it was just a really fun, we went early in the morning, and it was just the friends I was there with, and just the day was really beautiful, and you know, it was just such a nice little moment that we all kind of got to share together. So that was probably one of my favorite things. So anyway, that is all the questions that I have for this video. If you have any other questions you would like me to answer, feel free to comment or DM me. I can link my other social medias as well if you're on like Twitter or Instagram or something, want to hit me up there instead. And if you have more questions, would be happy to film another video down the line, sort of about what it's like to live in Hawaii. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for some of y'all. If you are thinking about moving to Hawaii, maybe I cleared some stuff up. But like always, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for a couple of new vlogs coming very soon.